Toronto. Today's programs are as follows. I am Lensa Hussein.
Hi, welcome to TVOMT Magala, Toronto. My name is Roberta Nure and here are the headline news. Independent paper says government banned them. 29 African international rights group called on Ethiopia Prime Minister to free jailed journalists. World Bank supports for development by force. Ethiopia's external debt exceeds over $12 billion. Ethiopia frees Eritrean war prisoners. Eritrea calls for lifting of sanctions, rejects UN accusations. Ethiopia worried over potential famine next year. Ethiopia ranks 121 out of 144 in global competitiveness. Independent paper says government banned them. Two weekly newspapers that have been critical of Ethiopia's ruling party have stopped publication because of government obstruction, the paper's publishers said Monday. The publishers are appealing to the country's newly appointed Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn to intervene. A government spokesman said the Ethiopian government is not telling printers not to print the papers. Both Fete, the country's largely weekly at 27,500 copies, and Fenot Netzanet, which is published by the largest opposition group Unity for Democracy and Justice, have been unable to reach their readers for several weeks after the state-owned Berhanina Salem printing company refused to continue printing them. The group says its paper was forced off market after featuring critical articles on the legacy of Ethiopia's late leader Meles Zenawi, who died August 20th. The opposition group said it sent Haile Mariam 2 letters demanding he stop authorities' attack of the constitutionally guaranteed freedom of speech. Temesgen Desalegn, editor-in-chief of Fete, said that his paper's July 20 issue was blocked from distribution because a prosecutor said that news report it hoped to publish that Meles had died was false. The printer has since refused to publish the paper, citing an order by the Ministry of Justice, he said. Berhanina Salem Printing Company is controlled by the state, and its refusal to print Fete Fenot Netzanet, 2 publications critical of the government, is a result of official pressure and political censorship, said Mohammed Kaita of the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. Meanwhile, CPJ last week said Ethiopia should stop harassing journalists covering Ethiopia's Muslim community after a reporter for the U.S. government-funded Voice of America was briefly detained last week. The reporter was forced to erase interviews she had recorded at a protest by Ethiopia's Muslim community, CPJ said. 29 African international rights groups call on Ethiopia Prime Minister to free jailed journalists. A diverse group of 29 Africa and international-based rights groups today called on new Ethiopian Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn to free journalists jailed in the Horn of Africa country and respect international and Ethiopian law protecting freedom of expression. The call comes as Ethiopia is seeking a post on the United Nations Human Rights Council. We urge you, government, at this opportune moment to consider and protect the vital role that independent journalists, civil society organizations, and political dissidents play in holding the government to account for its performance on its domestic and international human rights obligations, says the letter. We appeal to you to restore the faith of the Ethiopian people and the international community in the Ethiopian state and lead a government which draws its strength and legitimacy from the pluralistic inclusion of different voices from all segments of societies. The letter was organized by Johannesburg-based Civicus, World Alliance of Citizen Participation. World Bank support for development by force. Forceful villagization in Ethiopia, including arbitrary arrests, beating, and killings, have been occurring not in armed conflict or political uprising, but as part of a government program billed as improving life for indigenous people and other ethnic minorities in the designated rural areas. Donor governments supporting World Bank programs in Ethiopia, including the United States, are indirectly funding these atrocities. Under its Villagization program, the Ethiopian government plans to relocate 1.5 million people spread out across these areas by the end of 2013. People are to be moved into new villages where the government has promised improved access to healthcare, schools, and other public services. The problem is, as Human Rights Watch field research has found, that the government is being duplicitous on both ends of the relocation. The largely indigenous people being moved have had no say in the process, despite being forced off land closely tied to their culture. Those who object or late return to their old lands become targets of abuse by the Ethiopian security forces. Once forcibly evicted and moved to the new villages, families are finding that the promised government services often do not exist, giving them less access to services than before the relocation. Dozens of farmers in Ethiopia's Gambela region told us they are being moved from fertile areas where they survive on subsistence farming to dry, arid areas. Ojad's family farm was on the river, but as part of the villagization program, the government took his farm and forced his family to relocate a dry area. There are reports that this fertile land is being leased to multinational companies for large-scale farms. The World Bank has policies that are designed to prevent against forced resettlement and to protect the rights of indigenous people affected by World Bank projects. But it has been closing its eyes to these abuses. On September 25th, the bank's board of directors approved the third round of this PBS loan, the biggest ever granted in Ethiopia, again without applying the bank's own safeguard policies. Ethiopia remains in much need of development aid, particularly in the areas of food, security, health, and education. But donors need to hold true to their own policies to ensure that they don't fund the harmful projects directly or indirectly. The U.S. and other donor countries should be telling the World Bank that they do not want to become complicit in further abuses of villagization and that World Bank funding for Ethiopia's misguided effort needs to stop. Ethiopia's external debt exceeds over $12 billion. A report from the Ethiopian Ministry of Finance and Economic Development indicates that the country's runaway external debt has increased dramatically from the total and official 134 billion birr at the end of June last year to 200 billion birr. The document also reveals the government's internal debt has also exceeded well beyond 60 billion birr. According to experts from the ministry, the 200 billion birr debt doesn't include the recent massive loans such as the $3 billion from China for the construction and expansion of railway systems, as well as the US $300 million loan from Exim Bank. Out of the 134 billion birr debt, 85 billion birr loan was found from the multilateral creditors like the IMF, World Bank, and the African Development Fund, while the remaining 49 billion birr comes from bilateral creditors like China, India, Kuwait, as well as from commercial lenders like Exim Bank. Loans from multilateral creditors are generally payable within 40 to 50 years at an interest rate of 0.75% and 10 years grace period. Loans from commercial lenders like Chinese Exim Bank are payable within 20 years at an interest rate of 2% at 7 years grace period. As the amount of loan increases, the principal and interest of the amount has also increased every year. For example, this year alone, Ethiopia is required to pay a total of 3.8 billion birr for the principal and interest of the 134 billion birr total debt. Though Ethiopia brags it needs no assistance to build the much-hyped $5 billion worth mega dam on the Nile River, all signs on the ground show that it indeed needs a mega loan from these same creditors before it got along anywhere with the controversial 5-year growth and transformation plan. That only means one thing. The more the government borrows, the less likely it'll end up paying the growing debt, and that eventually led to the upset economy besides leaving a debt-ridden generation behind. Ethiopia frees Eritrean war prisoners. Ethiopia has released 75 Eritrean prisoners of war captured in March during a cross-border attack on a military base, officials said on Tuesday. The government of Ethiopia believes it is proper to release these captive soldiers of Eritrea and let them go where they want, government spokesman Bereket Simon told AFP. Addis Ababa attacked the Eritrean base in retaliation for the killing of 5 tourists in Ethiopia's Afar region it blamed on its arch-rival, although an Ethiopian rebel group claimed responsibility and Asmara rejected the claim. Eritrea won independence from Ethiopia in 1993 after a 30-year struggle, but they returned to war in a bloody 1998 to 2000 border conflict which left at least 70,000 dead. The two countries remain at odds over the flashpoint town of Badem awarded to Eritrea by a UN-backed boundary commission but still controlled by Addis Ababa. 7 of the released prisoners applied for political asylum in Ethiopia, Bereket said, adding that they were free to stay if they wanted. Tensions flared in January when 2 Germans, 2 Austrians, and 1 Hungarian were killed in the attack on the slopes of Ethiopia's famed Erda Al volcano in the desolate Afar border region. Eritrea denied involvement in the incident and did not retaliate after Ethiopia attacked their military base. The Ethiopia-based Afar Revolutionary Democratic Unit Front rebels claimed responsibility. They said they have no ties to Asmara. Eritrea calls for lifting of sanctions, rejects UN accusations. Eritrea has asked the UN Security Council to lift sanctions against it after a UN expert's report showed that the tiny East African state had cut its support for the Al-Qaeda-allied Al-Shabaab militant group in Somalia. But in a letter released on Monday, Eritrea also slammed that report, which probes violation of arms embargoes on Eritrea and Somalia for falsely accusing the government of Eritrea for violations that are not substantiated with solid evidence. The Security Council imposed an embargo on Eritrea in 2009 over concerns its government was funding and arming Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab charges Asmara denied. The UN's experts report released in July said that the support has evaporated. Eritrea responded in the letter to the 15-member council dated September 27, saying sanctions should be removed as the initial and principal accusation concerning Eritrean support to Al-Shabaab is now proven to be non-existent. The admission is acknowledged with obvious resentment and uncalled for caveats, omissions, and rationalizations, he said. The UN monitoring group does not have a case against Eritrea. The events over the past year have clearly shown that it is in fact Ethiopia that is actively engaged in destabilizing Eritrea, Eritrea said, rejecting claims by the report that it remained a destabilizing influence in the region. The Red Sea, the state has previously rejected these allegations and has called for the replacement of the panel's members over what it calls their bias in favor of its archfoe, Ethiopia. Eritrea, which declared independence from Ethiopia in 1993 after a long war, is routinely accused by Addis Ababa of supporting Ethiopian separatists. Eritrea says the accusations are false and aim to tarnish its reputation. Ethiopia worried over potential famine next year. Fears are growing in Ethiopia that famine could find its way to the East African country next year in devastating fashion. Those worries were highlighted in an article by Alamayu G. Mariam, a leading figure on Ethiopian politics and society, that the country could face a potential devastating famine as early as next year if action is not taken to alleviate the struggles rural areas faces as a result of the drought. For the past several months, there has been much display of public sorrow and grief in Ethiopia, he began. But not for the millions of invisible Ethiopians who are suffering and dying from starvation, or what the experts euphemistically call acute food security. These Ethiopians are spread across a large swath of the country. Experts believe that well-focused attention to the issue on making well-researched data widely available and disseminating high-quality climate information, generating enhanced scientific capacity through analytical work, and ensuring informed decision-making and effective awareness and advocacy. Ethiopia ranks 121 out of 144 in global competitiveness. The World Economic Forum has just released its Global Competitiveness Report 2012-2013. It ranked 144 countries, 38 in which was African countries. The rankings are based on the following 12 pillars of competitiveness: institutions, infrastructure, macroeconomic environment, health and primary education, higher education and training, goods market efficiency, labor market efficiency, financial market development, technological readiness, market size, business sophistication, and innovation. Ethiopia was the only country ranked in the Horn of Africa. Its global position was 121 out of 144. The following African countries in the descending order ranked higher than Ethiopia: South Africa, Mauritius, Rwanda, Morocco, Seychelles, Botswana, Namibia, Gambia, Gabon, Zambia, Ghana, Kenya, Egypt, Algeria, Liberia, Cameroon, Libya, Nigeria, Senegal, Benin, and Tanzania. The following African countries ranked lower than Ethiopia in descending order: Cape Verde, Uganda, Mali, Malawi, Madagascar, Cote d'Ivoire, Zimbabwe, Burkina Faso, Mauritania, Swaziland, Lesotho, Mozambique, Chad, Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Burundi. In 2011-2012, Ethiopia ranked 106 out of 142 countries, and in 2010-2011, it ranked 119 out of 139 countries. Ethiopia's most problematic facets for doing business were access to financing, corruption, inefficient government, bureaucracy, and inflation. Thank you for watching TVOMT Magala Toronto. My name is Roberto Nur.
Welcome to TV Oromo Magala Toronto. My name is Bultam Omer, and today I'm reading an article titled "One Does Not Live as One Knows, but as Time Demands," and this is by Mr. Ipsa Gautama. Though not a fundamental one, a symbolic change is taking place in the Ethiopian Empire. A famous kingdom of Walaita destroyed, its leaders wiped out, and its population reduced to less than half of what it used to be, from death and enslavement by the Habasha invaders before 100 years. Those enslaved were turned into pack animals to carry goods and flour mills to grind grain for the army that continued to invade other lands. Their women, in addition to the labor assigned to them, were also used as gratifiers for the gun wielders. Many were sold in domestic and foreign markets and converted for cash. Those enslaved had also a great contribution in building the invaders' palace found in 1886 in Oromia, another new colony. Today one of their sons is going to make that palace at his dwelling and be their king and commander-in-chief for the modern version of the army without forging a spear. Like they made his ancestors prostrate, they are also going to prostrate in front of him. His religion is one they refer to as Kenesha, derogative for Protestant. With contempt or Sera Mariam, anti-Mary, even if he is the de facto their puppet, de jure he is the highest king. Nothing could move without his signature. It is not hard to imagine what impact would this have on the psychology and the morale of the chauvinist. Since he is yet a tool of oppression, no benefit will come out of him for the oppressed. But the symbolic victory to be gained by that will not be simple. Some say because there is hidden land of the Toso, in it no one can reverse it. They believe that even the money the TPLF plundered and piled up in the network it laid down to ensure other peoples cannot bend the hand. Like it is said, that who abuses the destitute cannot become rich. Even if the hand of the Toso or other is not there, the catastrophe that is approaching, darkening, does not seem to turn back. Maltreatment has reached to people's necks. What is happening right now is different from the past. Though that of the Habasha kings were not themselves Habasha, their origins were highly confidential, for the reason they used to tag them to Solomon. Before the composition of the Darg was known, it was rumored of the chief of Walamo. even after they were made public, except for the leader's color rather, being dark. His own origin was never mentioned, though the onlookers assumed him to be anything that they liked. It was tried to make him the son of Menelik's illegitimate son. After all, they were gone. The question, were not the empire as well as the Darg's leader Oromo, started to be asked. All that was to say, since Oromo had contributed leadership for the empire over a long period, they have no right to ask for contributed leadership and independence. They know in their hearts that Oromo had never joined them as people, except as captives, servants, and assimilated individuals. Tigrawai did not bother to insist on false evidence from history. They tried to mold changes that seemed all inconclusive. First they said federal, now they are talking about equal participation in the party. With that, the son of the Southerns, in particular that of Walaita, has publicity mounted onto the saddle. There is also fake election surrounding it. All the colonies are in it by pretentious election. They want to claim that their party is inclusive. Still, the system is what the colonizer has laid down for itself. It does not work for other parties except for themselves. Many may say one that mounted have their own personality except identity to console themselves. The system has decayed. How far the president maneuver can buy its life is unknown. But unless the rights of the peoples to national self-determination are publicly recognized and implemented peacefully, what has decayed could suddenly fall apart and cause more damage. To benumb liberation movements of the peoples, Wayane had gathered and created for all organization it called the People's Democratic Organization, and declared Tigray have one organization each. It means on paper South and North has equal voices, that they may not question its authority in the course of time that the TPLF entangled them in the system and laws denying the harmonious relations by continuous assessment systems it has laid down. True power lies with one that has the upper hand on the economy and control mechanisms. For the time that is Wayane, whether to dodge hate piled for 20 years or because the rain has fallen from its hand, it has stepped back. It is what has said that even most of the economy is in the hands of the individuals that only Mullahs knew. What is known in the name of the organization considered not to even to be able to foot its own credits. It is not known if there is another force behind what is going on at present. For the time, the struggle going on in the oppressor's camp is covered in mist. Solution can be found only if the empire system crumbles. It is said, like what is said, changing stoves does not make sauce more palatable. If a snake molt its skin, it only loses the old one, for a new one remains snake. It rather becomes fresher. For this reason, whatever is to be done has to be done before it's new and getting stronger. It said, rather than jumping on and snatching away dogs trail after the cattle with loose horn, hoping that they drop for them, there are always those who are tempted by that in the camp of the oppressed. They will never visualize rallying their people and snatching away what belonged to them during the weakness period of the transition, but rather follow them meekly salivating. It needs to be revolutionary to think in that way. The time we were born, the time we grew up, and the time of our old age had all differences. Technology, human knowledge, climate, etc. will slowly go on bringing changes about. It is possible that the development and growth that come with the time may bring its positive or negative change with them. All that could have influence on no one's outlook. If change is dragged, it may be invite revolution. By change, it is meant that when in society something that is different from the known way happens. It is like the one where a knowns means an empire in which only the Habasha is head. A social condition is a meshed up web where changes comes in turns. The desire of human being for independence, freedom, peace, and justice will not be satisfied by changing faces of the oppressor. It rather continues to sharpen its methods in order to go on surviving. When coming to the struggle for independence and freedom, we do not look at it differently from possible changes taking place in society. Whether change comes slowly on a revolutionary way, it is to negate stagnation problems in society. That is something that comes naturally or hasten leadership. When one says it living accordingly to the times, it means to compete with the change that occurred as not to be overtaken by stagnation. Since there is no growth in stagnation, society has existed carrying out a never-ending change to accommodate a coming new generation. For this reason, to move leaving space rather for others is a natural order. Lack of all that could create chaos. Chaos serves no one the same purpose. It can be observed that in the world, the desire to enrich oneself by consuming the other is getting more aggressive than ever before. To look at it silently will have without doubt fatal repercussion. If the Oromo chose to look at what silently they may not exist as self-sustaining nation, but as the downtrodden individuals for the time. Soon they will not have a country, language, history, culture, and tradition to refer to. That could be learned from the Oromo tribes in the north, but if they pull all the courage and defend themselves with determination, the opportunity for survival is immense. Self-defense is blessed by all situations, regions, and laws. Even if the activists of that time are now aging, Oromo struggle that commenced 4 decades ago is still young. It should not be surprising if there are among them that are fed up of the long journey. But if patriotic activists and the young generation start disarming before questions that release the struggle got answers, then it be worrisome. With that, Oromo survival as a people could come under question. Those against whom the struggle is being waged still questions if Oromo have any claim against them. They are rather seen planning for more sinister move to extend their rule over Oromia eternity. There are among Oromo activists that are ignited for the fire for liberation, struggle that say to them, had you understood the question we raised, you would have known that they were not meant to separate us. Forgive us if it appeared that it does not, and even seem if they have arranged for a fallback if they refuse accepting their apology. Is this what they say? Do not stand by but join in plundering of your father's house? Or is it contempt for oneself? Many saboteurs were born in the process of the struggle. For over 100 years they kept the Oromo people apart. They divided Oromia into several regions convenient for their purposes. They scattered Oromo tribes that were its pole and rafters over those regions. Regions, tribes, and religions that were strength for generations now became the weak joints. They have to go back to situations before they were occupied and look into how these differences served as strength and Oromoized their outlook. Otherwise, looking at the self and each other with alien spectacles will blur the sight. Oromo is one nation. Being one does not guarantee having unity. Unity is to be wholesome and show integration with harmony, knowing but not exaggerating existence of differences. Required unity is the unity of the Kaio, the unity for defending one's country from the people and evil. The love of one's country must be expressed from the heart and not from the mouth. That would realize when one starts to look at itself, at each other and the world from the Oromo perspective. Oromo had ethical standards, lines to not be crossed, and internal and external relations. In independent Oromia, the laws of Wak and those of the men enforce them. Now they may need social pressure rather, and volunteers to be reintroduced and enforced. Oromo have several political organizations. It will be a mistake to see those or cause to be the same as non-existent. To run away from strengthening those that are already there and to try to suggest coming up with a strong one is unlikely. The brain and experience are those that built the unable to pull it down or prop it up. The seeming weak that different problems hindered from leaping forward have only a temporary glitch and will overcome soon. Like it said, broken pieces are together wholesome. They can make it faster if they raise hand in hand. That is likely. Habasha elites can no more hold the empire as it used to be. For now they have chosen the commander-in-chief with own identity from the colonies for the first time. Though fake, it has symbolic significance for the region. What the TPLF started as function now has crossed to political party. They are coming out declaring one whom peers voted for in the party can rule the country irrespective of national origin. But that cannot change the nature of the state. Their coming that far indicate their understanding of problems going on engulf the region. They know that for the enslaved, the change that started cannot be stopped until the empire state is dismantled. One does not live as one knows, but as time demands, is saying with great depth that came down from the Oromo forefathers, it is required to wait, prepared to catch what the time hurls. To be active so as when Oromo enemy comes out with changed tactics and strategies unless one meets with it oneself. It should not be forgotten that assumed weak joints that the enemy tries to poke at are also each other's strengths. To understand Oromoma, others together, and see problems that Oromo is one, it is for the people that have one language, one history, one common base for culture and tradition, and one common source of oppression. So far, no Oromos has come out denying this. What is mixed up is the inability to fix in the common, the standard of good and evil, honor and humiliation. An enemy for one is seen being friend for the other. If they cannot differentiate that together they are bound to be enemy to each other, that is happening because their source of reference is not known, their own, but that the aliens kept aside for them. The Oromo civilization is different from others. To use it, that it is essential to go back to one civilization roots and research. The panacea for doubting and wavering could be found there. In a struggle, there could be no alternative with success to commitment and determination. Honor and glory for the fallen heroines and heroes, liberty, equality, and freedom for the living, and Nagaya and Arara for the Ayana of our foreparents. Again, this was an article by Mr. Ibsa Gutama. My name is Bultam Omer, and you're watching TV Oromia Magala, Toronto.
Gabruma keisati ala pirande munde bilisom somorti Oromia dice Gabruma keisati ala pirande munde bilisom somorti Dawa cercari fetiro Harar tirreda wa cercari fetiro Awashi fada ma bishoftu finne Harme birande Afanko adato Viejo senato L'amico sabajo La pagate birande mu Afanko adato Viejo senato L'amico sabajo La fogate birande muri Perda peratu persisa persiftu Kotatav daldala sabona sabonto Gamesa fugota doktorota Kenya Dice virandemos en anagapate Oromia dice Gebruma Kaisati Ala birande munde Bilisam samorti Bilisam samorti Oromia dice Gebruma Kaisati Ala birande munde Bilisam samorti Bilisam samorti Baleda fi arsiji ma fi shakiso Baleda fi arsiji ma fi shakiso Walla gana kamte borana la gelle Arme birande Afanko adato Bieto senato L'amico sabato La fangate birande moye Afanko adato Viejo senato, l'amico sabato, la faccate virante mai. Barata baratu, barsisa barsitu, tadav daldala sabona sabontu, camisa figota doktorota Kenya, dice virante musena nagapata. Oromia dice Gebruma Kaisati Ala birande munde Bili son morti Son morti Oromia dice Gebruma Kaisati Ala birande munde Bili son morti Bili son morti Iluda fi ambo khamise fi wallo Iluda fi ambo khamise fi wallo Chalan ko fi da dargo belle fi dabbal Arme birande Afanko adato Viejo senato Amico sabato La fagate birande muye Afanko adato Viejo senato L'amico sabato La fagate birande muye Borota borotu Persisa persifto Kotatav daldala sabona sabontu Camisa figota doktorota Kenya Dice virande musena nagapata
Hi, another tactic on the colonizer. Attack on Oromo through religion. Article by Ibsa Gautama. Most Muslims in the empire are Oromo. For this reason, the race issue concerns Oromo more. Faith is one's own. Nobody that tried to impose faith on another by force had ever been fully successful. If not, the course it is impossible to control the spirit of someone. For instance, there was long ago a kind of Abyssinia called Jonas IV. He threatened northern Oromo people that he will cut the tongue with which they make Azan Suman the prayer unless they change their faith to his type of Christianity. Some obeyed, some lost their tongues, and others fled the country. Johannes got his head cut off for that sin. But the faith is still flourishing in the same area. It is a birthright for people to conduct their faith in the way that they see fit. No one has the right or the ability to say one faith is better than the other. There are no world religions that they are divided into independent groups. For example, Christianity is split into Catholic, Orthodox, and Lutheran, etc. Islam also is split into Shia and Sunni, etc. All have many independent sects. All make effort to increase their membership by all means, to reveal truth of the faith to people and attract believers in their business. It should not be the concern of the state. The role of the state is to safeguard human rights. It is not to pitch one social group against the others for its own advantage. In a multi-religious society, unless the role of the state and faith are separated, there is a possibility of bringing unexpected catastrophe. That is why secularism becomes indispensable. The Ethiopian Empire had for a long embraced one religion and suppressed others. The state and the religion belonged to one nation. That became reason for several movements. Among them was the Great Demonstration of April 1974 that extended from Anwar Mosque in Mercato to the Parliament stage by Muslims in Finfinne. Through many demands where the major one was the demand for equality and to have the role in the country's affairs. The force that came out in solidarity from the other groups was no less than that out of the Muslims. With that, it was realized that the support for justice and equality supersedes all other differences claimed. To cool down the rage that was manifested, Islamic holidays were declared public holidays. The imam of the mosque was also made to sit on state occasions, on equal level with the paratish. The remaining grievances later started to explode in different ways, causing revolutionary whirlwind. Through some advantages are giving underhand for traditional religion, there is no more officially state region. The attack on Oromo religions had continued. Their agents were dispatched camouflaged as faith carriers to dissuade the youth not to fight injustice. The earlier issued license for Wakefana was revoked. Next, they tried to create conflict between Christians and Muslims in Jimma and Guma areas. Now they are threatening Muslims with terrorism unless they embrace a sect they assigned them, just like Johannes 4. Each citizen has human rights to be respected for him or her. It is also his or her duty to uphold the Constitution and laws proclaimed by their legitimate representatives. Whoever is in any religious group, he or she is individually responsible for breaking the law, not collectively as a group. Therefore, to search for openings or collective hearsay and interfere in others' faith has other motives than the alleged incriminating religious issue. Oromia is a country of believers. It is the right of Oromia society to prophesy any religion and group or individually. If it wills, it would not be forbidden to choose from any Christian, Islam, Wakefana, etc. Sects are to believe in nothing. To try such a measure would only be taken as aiming to mess up the peace of the religion. So far, the Oromo people have never been accused of extremism in any form. That is their permanent character. They are peace-loving people that do not invite problems, but only acts to recognition of its birthrights as a people. It prefers dialogue rather than violence. Now the government that has controlled the Abasha power is instigating Oromo individuals and groups to be violent. However, it will not be successful. People that claim Gada culture cannot idly sit and clap their hands with the kin of brutalized for one conscience. It is only the society that can discipline or pass judgment for the competition within its religious groups. If a group tries to injustice to another group or undermine the honor, identity, and unity of the nation, it knows that it cannot escape the wrath to come. It is up to individuals in religious or other groups to be careful not to transgress the law. Oromo movement should not be judged by internal ones. On this, they do not need present government in power to lecture them. Several campaigns were conducted against Oromia since the present government came to power. Its merchants are denied equal benefit of competing the market benefits. They have brought person from outside and settled on its lands. They have evicted farmers en masse and sold expensive tracts of their fertile lands to transnational investors. They are polluting its rivers and soil with poisonous chemicals. Without people, domestic animals, and the natural environment are being destroyed. Education, health services, and different benefits that could have been gained all are being crippled. The present campaign against the faith cannot be viewed separately. It is its continuation, a war taken to a higher level. The Oromo should not wait to see until the campaign on one of its religious advance to others. It has seen when yesterday they designated in vanguard of its struggle OLF as a terrorist and took the pretext to harass persons peacefully living in their homes. The OLF is a circular organization, its members from all regions and religions of Oromia. They have one common kayo, heroes and country. Its objective is to re-establish an independent Oromia and a free people. The Oromo enemy knows this and has devised several schemes to sabotage the liberation struggle. This will not be its final trial. It will look what it thinks are weak links and put pressure to break it. For this reason, all must wake up and stand guard for rights of its entire people. Some say that followers of Islam will not be less than half the people of the Oromo population. To aim at such huge number should not be seen as different from aiming at the whole population. For this reason, it is essential to be vigilant and defend against the agents that have infused into society. The blood of our nationals that spilled recently will not weaken our struggle, but rather it strengthen it more. It is imperative to get prepared and defend against imprisonment and killing that could be carried out in all corners of Oromia, be it for reasons told presently or by creating new ones. All martyrs are Oromo heroes. With blood, Bilasuma shall flourish, not fade. Thank you for watching TV Oromia. I am Lensa Hussein.